Good evening, everyone. We're just letting people come in. They're all arriving slowly here. I hope everyone's having a great evening. And thank you, everyone, for showing up today. I know it was a very last minute webinar setup here, so I really appreciate this. Okay. Just a few more people to come in. Okay. So as we begin, I just wanted to do a few housekeeping notes for everyone who is here. The session is being recorded. Also, if at all possible, if you could turn on your cameras, because we do want the session to be as interactive as possible for everyone. And also another housekeeping note is I know that I've sent out last week a reminder of the midpoint surveys, and I appreciate that everyone has received those. If anyone has any questions about them, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I'll be able to transfer your information or questions over to Lincoln Institute. Otherwise, I hope that you're doing well in the modules, and we do want you to get caught up to module 26 in order to complete those surveys for the midpoint. So we really appreciate that. Your feedback is extremely crucial in this pilot participation. So with that in mind, I will hand it over to our gracious facilitator, Michael Powell.
Thank you so much, Denise. Good evening to everybody. I hope you're all well. It's fantastic to have so many of you joining us today, particularly given the short notice. So I intend to honor the time that you're committing to developing yourself in this way. So I will just share my screen here. And we will not, given that we're talking about the subject of time management, let's not waste any more time introducing and get on with the content. So one of the reasons I am super excited to be talking about the art of mastering your time more effectively is that it's often overlooked and a critically important ability in our personal and professional lives. And my role in the first part of this session is to do a deep dive into why managing our time is so hard in inventory practice, but also where our best opportunities lie to buy back time in our day. And we're going to go a little bit beyond the scope of Leading Edge and some of the modules that you've enjoyed so far that relate to this subject matter and share a few additional insights, but we'll do some powerful reflection as well. As Denise alluded to, we're hoping for this to be quite interactive. There'll be a little bit of responding in the chat box, but more importantly, at about the midpoint, we'll actually break you out to have some conversations yourselves and do some critical peer-to-peer reflection as well. So just be ready for that. And we do appreciate not everybody can turn their cameras on, but if you can have your mic open, at the very least at those moments, it'll make it a lot more enjoyable for everybody. Excuse me. Later on in this session as well, I'm going to be summarizing some proven methods. We love to focus on what you can do to improve yourself in this space. And these are going to be designed specifically for you to use yourself as a practitioner to help you move from that sense of overwhelm that you might occasionally be feeling to one of control in the course of your day and buy you back that all important time for the not urgent but critically important components of your work that so often get neglected. So, don't forget as well, please stick to the end because we are definitely going to engage in a Q&A for anybody interested. So if you have any burning questions, maybe type them into the chat box and Denise will curate those for me and we'll address them either in the moment or during Q&A. But happy to talk about the subject matter of time management or anything else that actually crops up for you as well. So as you've probably gotten used to, I love trying to sort of test your perspectives, I guess, when it comes to challenges in veterinary practice. And for those of you that haven't done so already, what I would really love you to do is take out a secondary device, or if you are on your PC, you could simply just open a second window. If you've got a secondary device with a camera, use that QR code to access some polling via Menti. You've done this before. If it's a secondary window on your device, it's menti.com and you enter the code 68677871. And what we're hoping to do here is just see where things are at for you. You're at about the midpoint in the program. I am sure you've definitely made some progress in terms of addressing key stresses in your role. We're hoping you've experienced some real changes in that respect, but it'd be an interesting point to check in on what existing key stresses are still prevalent in the course of your work. Now, this could be time pressure. It could be managing expectations of clients. It could be difficult relationships with clients or team members still. Perhaps it's still managing stressful cases, dealing with financial limitations. Maybe it's work-life balance and long hours. We want to have some inkling of where your pain points are at still now, and I don't want to assume anything here on your behalf, so please educate me. I'm just going to switch over now to our polling software. Hopefully everybody has managed to access that. I will advance it to our very, very first slide there. What we want you to do is enter a 1 or 2 word response. If you can limit it to that, it works better for this word cloud, that sum up what the current key stress anxiety triggers are for you in practice. Enter as many as you like, but what we really want to do is create a word cloud here to give us a sense of what is the biggest challenges for you that are still prevalent. Rotations. I'm not sure what that second, you have to help me with that second word, Denise. Navle? Is that French?
I don't see the second word.
No. Okay. Let me just see whether or not this is coming up. I'll just change my sharing here, folks, so you can actually see it as well. Share. Can you see that now, Denise?
Yes, NAVLE is the accreditation exam to get your C of Q.
Ah, got it. Okay. Yeah, that would be particularly stressful. They're all getting sort of equal weighting here at the moment. Financial constraints still a challenge, particularly in this economic climate, right? Complex cases, difficult cases. Dog whisperer. I bet there's a story behind that. Is that a national dog whisperer or a local dog whisperer? Spreading disinformation, perhaps, I'm guessing. Record writing time, great. Good to see that one in there. Time management's come up as well. Expectations, interpersonal staff issue. They're going to continue to be a challenge, aren't they? Lack of time, record writing times come up again. Rural standard of care. That can be particularly challenging when we're balancing these desires to create great outcomes for our large animal patients versus those economic realities. Clinic management, that's difficult, right? And often that's something that's well beyond our control. Okay, that's really helpful. So clinic management's come up twice, which is interesting, and maybe this will be something that comes out in your breakout rooms, and you can expand on that a little bit more. But I am definitely seeing a bit of a mixed bag here. I do see things relating to time coming up, maybe 1, 2, maybe twice. So they'd probably be ranked up there with clinic management, I would imagine, if the words were exactly the same. Leadership, it's still a really mixed bag. I'm seeing a lot of things there that are actually beyond your control, which is interesting as well. So thank you. That gives me a really good sense of what is going on for you. And it is interesting to me that time management was included in that list because despite the fact that we have rolled from what was probably considered one of the most difficult times when it came to managing our time, being the pandemic boom, into an economic downturn. Nonetheless, in recent research that we've engaged in, we can certainly see that the stress of not having enough time in our day to achieve our goals, to our satisfaction, being a persistent feature of stress and anxiety for veterinarians out there, amongst many other things that you've shared. I'll just share the screen again, Denise. Hopefully you can just confirm for me that the slide deck is back up. No, you're playing up again. Let me try one more time. Having one of those technology days. No, you don't want to share. Let me just. Excuse me for a second. That is a bit of a
It's not
mystery.
letting.
All right, let me just try this one more time, folks. Sorry. Speaking of managing time, oh my goodness, why are you doing that?
Yeah, it's blank.
Tell you what I might do is I might just shut this window down completely. Sorry, folks. Let's try that now. You can enjoy seeing the puzzled expression on my face as I try to get technology working. Okay, I'll bring this back up again. It seems to want to default to that. Oh my goodness, that's so frustrating.
There you
Denise,
go.
I wish you could take this. Oh, did it come up?
It came up briefly.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, I didn't do anything different, but anyway, sorry, folks. So what I wanted to do was just share this slide with you that actually shows the ranking of stresses from a relatively recent project. Given that it was in the pandemic boom, which was only 3 years ago, which is rather amazing. And what you can actually see there is amongst many of the stresses that you've described, we're still seeing stress and anxiety in our role featuring fairly heavily as a driver of attrition from the profession. And in terms of how much stress and anxiety is going on out there, you can see a fairly alarming nearly 80%, indicating that this is a regular feature in the course of their work. And then when we actually explored with them what their key stresses were, you could actually see back then, this is 2021, 2022, that not enough time to achieve their objectives to their satisfaction featured very heavily. And we've engaged in a recent research project that actually showed time management has, despite things really slowing down and becoming a little bit more manageable compared to the pandemic boom, it is still featuring quite heavily. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm really happy to be sharing this subject with you is that I've been a vet for over 30 years now, which is fairly alarming to state such a large number. And one of the things that really stood me in good stead in my career was I got a chance to practice in 4 different countries, including nearly 9 years in the UK. And a lot of that time was working as a locum in dozens and dozens of practices alongside hundreds and hundreds of vets, including some after hours referral practice. And one thing I can say for certain when it comes to time management, based on both my own experience in practice as a business owner and now having worked with thousands of veterinarians at Lincoln, all the exceptional time managers that I know, and you probably know these people as well, you've probably got them in your practice too, or maybe you're one of them. They seem to get through an enormous amount of work with these. They have a seemingly unflappable capacity to absorb extra load. They're more likely than anybody else to ever get out the door close to, or God forbid, on time. One thing they all share in common, they are not actually so much the masters of time, but rather the masters of prioritization. And hopefully, as a result of at least one leading edge module so far, you understand what I mean by this. But I want to step you through it again, just to make sure you really get this concept the way it was intended. The phrasing of the term itself, time management, is actually a misnomer because it implies a level of control over time that we don't actually have. Time itself isn't manageable. You can't slow it down or speed it up. What we can control is what we focus our attention on or not at a given point in time, i.e., what we prioritize. And it was summed up really, really nicely by Stephen Covey with his urgent, important matrix. Could I just have a yes or a no in the chat box if anybody's seen this so far in the modules that they've engaged in? I think it should be a yes, but just type into the chat box whether or not you've seen our module dedicated to this concept of prioritization. And Denise, maybe you can give me just a bit of a rundown on the number of responses that we're getting there. They mostly yeses?
Mostly yeses. We do have a couple no's.
Okay. But look, for those that have seen this already, I'm going to do a quick recap. For those that haven't, this will be really helpful for you as well. So Stephen Covey, in his best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I definitely recommend that read if you have not read that book. It's still as relevant now, nearly 40 years on, as it was when it was first released. What he says is we should focus on being more effective. And what he means by that is getting the most important things done rather than attempting to be efficient, which is just getting more done. And according to Covey, every task can be classified by its urgency and its importance. I want to explain this a little bit better for you. In a veterinary setting, so many of the tasks that we face day in, day out require at least reasonably urgent attention, right? Where things go wrong, though, for so many of us, is that so many of the tasks that we give our attention to often lack real importance for us to do personally. But because of the urgency, we just handle them ourselves anyway. Truly important tasks are those we specifically need to do, and they're typically the ones that either require, they do typically require urgent attention as well. And this could be providing urgent veterinary treatment for critical patients under our care. It could be appointments booked in for us, procedures scheduled for us, speaking to an upset client who'd be waiting to hear back from you. You get the picture. But there are often ones there that are less urgent but contribute significantly to our values, purpose, goals, and lead to more satisfying careers for us up in this blue zone on the top right. These might be things like developing ourselves through team training, researching and following up cases. Perhaps it's engaging in the leading edge program. Ensuring good energy, mindset, and resilience at work by eating lunch, drinking water, and perhaps going to the bathroom every so often. Perhaps it's leaving work at a reasonable hour so that you can exercise and spend time with the people that you care about. Critically important, but don't tend to be classified as urgent by us. Then down in the yellow zone, we have the urgent and important. We have the not urgent or important. Now, this is in rare cases that some of us might actually be wasting time in this not urgent, not important zone. So often there isn't as much of a chance to buy back time. Where the opportunity typically lies for us as clinicians, though, is exploring how we can buy time in this not urgent but important zone, the red zone down on the bottom left, as this is where a tremendous amount of your professional satisfaction, and what we're doing is buying more time for the not urgent, important that often suffers as a result of our challenges with prioritization. So we're looking in that not important but urgent zone on the bottom left. So how do you make a start on this? Well, things in the not important, not urgent zone should definitely be stopped if you can. If you are still engaging in these, and there is limited opportunity typically, like I just mentioned, but it could be just stop checking your social media in your break and do 10 minutes of case follow-ups instead. Maybe an example. I doubt it for most of you. But where the bigger opportunity typically lies is in the urgent, not important zone. And remember, by not important, what we mean is not important for you specifically to do. And the key is learning how to leverage ourselves through delegation. So my question for you to ponder is, what urgent tasks are you routinely doing that you do not need to handle specifically? Could there be any more there that you are handling when you don't really need to? And I want to take that question into a little breakout, Denise, if we can. We won't make this a very long one, given my little tech issues earlier. We might limit this to just 5 minutes, Denise. And what I want you to share with your colleagues or colleague is a reflection on, are you currently feeling stretched and or overwhelmed in the course of a typical day? What do you think challenges your time management the most? What is it? Is it walk-in emergencies? Is it surgery and procedure lists that are long? Is it chatty clients and consultations? Were these, or are they still something you've had to grapple with? Have you focused on delegating? and dumping and deferring. And I encourage you not to be embarrassed to share here if this still is a challenge for you, because we can all relate. So let's give it a go. Denise, are you ready to send everybody off to breakouts?
I am ready.
Okay, enjoy your conversations. We might just debrief that once you all arrive back. Don't forget to click the accept button to go into your breakout rooms. And please turn your mic on at the very least for this. And if you can do video, that would be brilliant. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Alexander, sometimes it's interesting though, isn't it, that we think we're the only person struggling with a challenge like this, right? And some of these are such universal skills deficiencies that we have to close the gap on. And we're living in fairly exciting times because there's a real shift towards leveraging in lots of different ways when it comes to note taking and clinical examinations. There's some really exciting sort of trends afoot, which is good for us as clinicians, being constantly feeling like we're being stretched. All right, so thank you, Alexander. But I wondered if anybody else had an interesting conversation that they could just share very briefly, maybe via the chat or even just unmuting for a second. Anybody find some common ground or learn an interesting hot tip like Alexander? Feel free to unmute or type something in the chat box. Denise, maybe you can relay to me if anything comes through in the chat box.
Sure will.
We'll give it a second.
I can say something briefly.
Thanks, Emily.
We talked a little bit about the interesting part about how we agree with this. Obviously, a lot of these things that we feel should be delegated, as in a veterinarian doesn't need to do those tasks. But the kind of knowing that and actually being in a culture that allows you to implement that, because we were all of us actually sharing stories about how we've been in situations where we've been told to delegate. Then when we try to delegate, it's been kind of flipped the script on us, and we've been told that we're not a team player, we're not doing our role, like, everyone should be helping out here. And so I think not just in this course, but in a lot of different situations, I've struggled with that. And I've heard a lot of stories across the board of management that on one hand says, yes, delegate, but on the other hand, doesn't support a culture that actually allows you to do that.
Yeah. Emily, that's really difficult, right? When we're not singing on the same song sheet as the rest of our team, that makes it difficult. And, to be honest, a lot of practices that are getting traction with this program are sitting down and doing it all together to try to rectify that and close the gap for the entire team, because it is so critical that management are on board with these sorts of concepts as well. I think another element is, and we'll touch on this in a second, is making sure that our support team are well upskilled and trained and encouraged, to be closing this gap for us as well. So, it's not necessarily as easy as just a complete reset. We've got to put all the foundations in place first for this to be really successful at a practice level, that's for sure.
I've got a couple more comments in the chat.
Oh yeah, please share them.
One was using Chat GPT to help with records.
Yeah.
And the second one was depend on which staff are working, how efficient you can be.
Yes. Yeah, that is definitely a challenge as well, right? We might be working alongside a colleague who isn't as gifted as us when it comes to mastering time. And that can put a lot more pressure on us. And sometimes we have this sense that we've got to carry more of the weight ourselves, which makes it difficult. And sometimes, perhaps what's being referred to there is the individual might be a support team member who just doesn't have that capability yet, or the right mindset in terms of leveraging us as much as possible. Any others there, Denise?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. What I want to do is just jump into a little bit more polling. Now, as a result of our very clunky tech issue, it's a Monday morning Zoom issue by the looks of it. I'm not going to change my screen share, but the QR code is exactly the same as before. So if you've still got that window open or your device handy, we are going to run through just a couple more questions. These are statements that I'd like you to respond to. We're going to explore a really particularly important concept when it comes to leveraging ourselves. And the first one is, do you ever find yourself thinking or even saying, you know what, if you want something done right, you've just got to do it yourself? Have you ever in the past been guilty of saying this at the very least? Or is this something that you still occasionally say? I'm seeing Kathy putting a hand up there. Thank you for your honesty, Kathy. I'm still guilty of this occasionally too. Okay, so we've got 86%. Thank you. Thank you. It's a really common challenge, and it speaks to that competency gap, perhaps with the people around you that we just touched on previously. Do you ever find yourself thinking or saying, do you know what, it'll be much faster if I just handle it myself? So it's not so much about whether the team around you are capable, you just know you're going to get this done quicker. We'll give it a second. 100% seemed a little bit more accurate there at 85 versus 14. Okay, so a similar percentage before, speaking about the time with which we can get this done. Sometimes it feels like it takes longer to delegate effectively. All right, next one. Do you ever find yourself thinking or saying, if I do it myself, I know it will actually get done? This is another facet, right, of delegating. Give it a second. I don't believe it'll finish at 100%. You never know. 93%. Sorry, I'm assuming you can all see this populating on your screens as well. If not, I will talk through this more, but looks like 93% as a yes versus 7% as a no. So thank you. That is another issue, isn't it? Just trusting that this stuff is going to get done when we do delegate it. The next one, if I ask someone else to do it, they might think I'm lazy or shirking my own responsibilities. Emily was talking about this earlier, perhaps this concept to some degree. Let's see. And Emily, what you can probably see reflected there are people working in practices where delegation is encouraged and, from the top down. And, given that we have 44% saying that they don't experience this or haven't experienced this in the past, it's probably more speaking to a cultural approach to delegation. So we've got 56% at yes, 44% at no. The next one is, if somebody wants to help, they'll tell me. If they've got some availability, they'll come to me. So I better not ask in the meantime. Anyone relate to this one? 100% at no. We'll see. Yeah. We're going to do another deep dive on assertiveness, a really important non-technical competency. And for those 20%, this is really speaking to that challenge we sometimes have with being assertive and actually asking. We don't want to offend somebody. We don't want to overwhelm them. So as a result, we don't even ask. So you can see there, for a quarter of us, this has at least sometimes been a challenge. Thank you for your honesty there. All right, next one. I honestly don't have the time to develop the people around me. Speaking to the fact that perhaps the reason why it feels like it's going to be quicker if we do it ourselves is that the people around us aren't equipped to handle these things that we're delegating to them. The numbers are changing rapidly, but we've got roughly 31% at a yes and 71% a no. So it's a significant proportion of us identifying that, perhaps as a result of a culture where delegation isn't encouraged, not enough time and energy is being put into developing the capability of those around us to actually support us in that way. Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to shift back to Zoom now. Denise, just if you can confirm for me that you can actually see my screen share there.
I can see the screen share, yeah.
Okay.
You still have the QR code up.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, no issues this time, which is great. Okay, so that was super insightful because it looks like the majority of us can relate to at least one, if not many of these mindsets. And what I'm here to share with you is that if you answered yes to just one, or maybe even all of these, or even half of them, they're really legitimate reasons that you've grappled with that result in you just handling these tasks, at least occasionally, these tasks that aren't critically important for you specifically to handle. The reality is that you may, like I once did, need to overcome something we call the delegation myth. So when we look at all these very common mindsets, rather ironically, the exact opposite is actually true when it comes to effective delegation. Because delegation is a wonderful win-win when done correctly, because it leverages you and your time so you can focus on other things. And it gets you out of that urgent but not important zone, not important for you to do zone. At the same time, it ticks all of the intrinsic motivators of the people around you. They want more autonomy. They're looking for a pathway to mastery of something in their working day. And they love tapping into a deeper sense of purpose, you know? It gets a little boring cleaning cages all day. And therefore, they become more engaged in their work and they're enjoying their day more as well, and they're feeling more fulfilled. So feel good about delegation because you are actually doing somebody a big favor, and that is you're creating leverage. The point is, given our tendency to jump on everything that's urgent, and if we're honest, this is fueled by a reluctance sometimes to trust others to do it well, we often overlook these chances for small wins. So this is the big takeaway for this particular deep dive. We need to get better at assessing what urgent tasks are delegatable, and doing so, do it whenever an appropriate opportunity presents itself. Plus, do so in the knowledge that when we delegate, we're developing the people around us. And so too, do we develop our trust in their ability to get the job done. And the key take home here is this: the more that you can delegate tasks to the amazing support team around you, the more you're actually buying back valuable time for that not urgent but important zone in the blue there that I mentioned, where you can derive so much of your satisfaction and fulfillment and resilience. We're not talking about freeing up half a day here, but the key for taking back controlling your time more effectively is looking for incremental wins. You need to be seizing these opportunities, delegating the admission of a patient, drawing a blood sample, a simple client call that doesn't really require you to be involved. If a nurse isn't available in that moment, perhaps a kennel hand is. The point is, when we add up all of these incremental wins in the course of your week, you could buy yourself back a combined 20, 30, 40 minutes, maybe even more time that you didn't have before. So let's explore some of these wins. And a really great way to do that is to look at a concept that we didn't touch on in Leading Edge with you. That's really worth looking at. And it's called the third dimension of prioritization. Now, you know, that diagram's really showing a third dimension popping out of that not urgent, important zone. There's a gentleman by the name of Rory Vaden, and he talks about this concept in a TED Talk called The Focus Funnel. It's a fairly famous TED Talk, so you can look it up. And he explains that we actually need to take a 21st century approach to managing time. He believes not only should we be looking at the urgency and importance of a task, as Covey recommends, and he describes this as actually a two-dimensional prioritization approach, but we should also consider its significance. Meaning, this third dimension actually considers how long is this task that I'm going to engage in going to matter. I'll explain that in a second. Because significant tasks can actually have an exponential impact over time. A great case in point is to counter that sense we often have that we don't have time to develop others. A reasonable example might be training up a nurse to place an IV well. So often it's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, it's just going to be quicker if I sort this myself. And you know what? Some of these nurses, you know, they're just lacking confidence. I'm just not sure they're ready for this. I don't know if you've ever been guilty of this thought, certainly judging by some of your responses to that Menti poll, perhaps some of you have. What we really need to do is to flip the script on this and see that, you know, perhaps in the beginning, this is going to take us more time, but we have to look at it as an investment that's going to deliver us a return over time. We've got to do the maths on the little wins here. 15 to 30 minutes of training on how this nurse could place IVs well and the way that you like them done, perhaps, could actually save you 5 to 10 minutes per day, 4 to 5 times per week. Over the space of a year, this nurse could yield you a time return of 8,000%. We can achieve these wins by investing in the development of others. And this is really what Rory Vaden's getting at when he talks about significant time. Another example is prioritizing investing time to automate. And I've included a great saying here in relation to automation, and it's this: sometimes you need to slow down to speed up. It's worth writing down that one because it is so true. Some of these activities that I've mentioned here under automation can save exponential amounts of time over time. Can you give me a yes or no in the chat box? Somebody mentioned this earlier, which was interesting in the chat. Have you, in your practice, adopted AI-assisted note-taking? Just a yes or no if that's something that is underway in your business and you are utilizing. And Denise, maybe you can give me a bit of a rundown on how many yeses and nos we're getting. Just give it a second. How'd we go, Denise? Or you're muted.
We're about half that say yes, half that say no, or in the process.
Okay, great. Well, it's good to hear that half of you have adopted this, and I should imagine many of you are actually finding it to be incredibly beneficial. And, we work with thousands and thousands of veterinarians and hundreds of practices, and we're certainly getting that feedback. The first adopters are getting to a point now where this is saving them tremendous amounts of time. We don't have a lot of time to do a deep dive on AI note taking, but I would say the secret to truly saving time with AI notes is using an AI note taking system that properly integrates with your business management software. That's one of the secrets. Otherwise, we've got to do this clunky sort of manual copying over. And nothing's ever going to replace reviewing that. You still need to review your AI notes. AI does definitely get it wrong, and it's still your ethical and legal responsibility to make sure your notes are accurate. But gosh, it can save a tremendous amount of time. Another example of slowing down to speed up here is the creation of billing and estimating templates, along with procedure and inpatient treatment note templates. This is sort of where there's a bit of a gap with AI so far, at the very least. And the example that we've got here is a fracture repair. And in our practice, we had a host of these available in the system, and we would just edit the base template. Then it's just a copy and paste exercise. It wouldn't matter what the procedure was. The basic approach was always identical. There wasn't much variation. And all of this could be done at a click of a button, providing that we'd invested time to create them in the first place. Another great example of slowing down to speed up is cheat sheets for CRIs, anesthetics, drug doses. Always having a reference close to hand can save you so much time and effort in calculations over time. And when it's laminated and stuck to the wall, it saves time for others as well. Hopefully you get the picture there. The third one example here of significant time, there's a really great saying as well. Another one's worth writing down. You may have heard the old saying, measure twice, cut once, and failing to plan means planning to fail. There's a reason why these things exist. When we don't plan, we're actually just saying, you know what, understanding the work involved for the course of my day today is not important right now. And that seems really silly when we say it out loud. Efficient veterinarians actually plan their day, their week. Sometimes the really good ones are planning out their quarter and their year, depending on what objectives and goals they have on their plate. They allow for urgent and important work, but they create non-negotiable time for the not urgent important too. Most importantly, these veterinarians that do prioritize planning as a really significant process for themselves, they find a quiet place to do planning every day. The consult room's a great spot, perhaps at the start of a consulting block. Just taking 2 or 3 minutes, open the practice management software, have a look what's on your plate. Just get clear in your mind on what your day looks like in the urgent important zone. In other words, what do your consults and procedures look like that you specifically need to do? What inpatient care needs your attention? Do you have to do up some referral letters or discharge notes? Are there critical client communications for you to do? If so, when are you going to do them? Can you carve out time for perhaps following up on some CPD or cases? It's critically important that we get these things down on paper, scheduled into our day, including some contingency time. And that's preparing for the unexpected. That's a really great part of planning as well, because we all know over the course of a day, some stuff is going to pop up that we weren't expecting at all. Making time to plan will save you time. And this is what those annoying, naturally hyper efficient people are doing on a regular basis. So if you're not doing it, please write that one down as well. The final example of significant time is creating systems. Creating personal and team workflow systems can save you exponential amounts of time over time. A quote that I love that relates to this is by another really interesting author, Brian Logg. He's really big on business systems. And he says, if you're too busy to build good systems, then you'll always be too busy. Interesting one, right? Now, it could be that at this stage in your career that you have limited scope to introduce new workflow systems for your practice, but at the very least, creating personal systems for your workflow can be powerful. A great example our team came up with was veterinarians on procedures used the time between procedures, e.g. during recovery and induction and prep time for the next patient, to complete the notes, discharge forms for the preceding procedure. I know that sounds really simple, but if the procedure was routine, the surgery nurse would load up the note template that I showed you earlier, and our job as the veterinarian in charge would be to spend that gap customizing those notes and creating the correct discharge form instruction where required. Another classic example of a simple personal workflow system, an actual former experienced veterinarian shared with me, was utilizing computer notes to cut and paste things like referral letters. We can create a template for those as well. They created a system whereby they wrote in such a way that at least parts of their documentation were suitable for inclusion, both via a copy and paste. You get the picture. These little workflow systems can save us so much time over time. So what I want to do is wrap up priority management here with a question. I'd like you to type yes or no in the chat box one final time for me. Has this brief exploration into the 3 dimensions of priority management helped you identify at least one specific way you can find some incremental wins amongst the tremendous pulls on your time? Can you see some ways that you might be able to create even a tiny bit more breathing room for that not urgent but incredibly important quadrant, even if it's just 20 to 30 minutes per week? Just type a yes or no in there, and maybe Denise, when you get a second, you can unmute and just let me know what those numbers are looking like. We'll give it a second.
Quite a few yeses.
Great. Fantastic.
Great. Not one no yet.
One no, not yet.
Not a no.
No no's. Okay, well, that's even better.
No.
Okay, brilliant. Well, a final thought for you on mastering time is this. Some of the facets that fall into that significant time zone are aspects of your personal leadership. And we're talking about those elements like planning, templates, creating systems, etc. On the other hand, though, things like executing team workflow systems, delegating tasks successfully, developing others' capability, these are all incredibly important as well when it comes to taking more control of your time, but they're all reliant on achieving greater proficiency of your interpersonal leadership, meaning your ability to engage, influence, and inspire the team around you. So, as you've probably noticed already, we have a lot of modules dedicated to the art of interpersonal leadership. It's critical, so don't forget, for the next 6 months of the leading edge content that you're going to be exposed to, there are so many modules in there in and around this topic of more positively influencing the team around us. So enjoy those, and don't forget, if there is one now that you've gone, wow, now I get why that is important when it comes to the concept of a delegation or effective execution of a strategy, go back and review them as well. You can do that. They're all sitting there, as a little library for you to review on. But in the interest of time, I'm going to thank you now for your attention and engagement. I hope I've managed to add a little bit more value to you. And can I say, we are still so excited to be sharing in this journey with all of you. Not only is it a first of its kind when it comes to a really important project for sustainability for this industry that we're so incredibly passionate about, but to be honest, I can speak on behalf of the CVMA and Denise and Kathy. I'm sure you would attest to this as well. Our deeper purpose is really about helping veterinarians experience more fulfillment and freedom in the important work you do. So we feel incredibly privileged to be part of this journey with you. I'm going to hand back over to you, Denise, before we jump into Q&A, just to double check there isn't anything else you'd like to add.
No, nothing on my end. I don't see any questions yet, but feel free to add your questions in the chat if you feel more comfortable, or we'll just open the floor to any questions.
And I
Great
don't.
presentation, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Despite the clunky tech moments, that's good to hear. Yeah, and look, it doesn't have to be about time management. Maybe it's about something else that you've covered so far that you've still got a burning question with. Maybe it's even a comment. It's about your experience applying a principle that relates to time management or any of the concepts you've been exposed to so far. We'll give it a second. We'll get comfortable with the brief moment of silence, Denise.
Sounds good.
We take it as a good sign.
Yeah.
Nothing's come through?
Well, I'll go.
Oh, great,
Okay,
Kathy.
you go,
Thank
Kathy.
you.
So
I'm gonna break the ice.
I'm actually thinking about that first breakout that we had, and one of my thoughts was leaders need to take leading edge, particularly to understand the value of delegation. And maybe even as Emily had mentioned in our breakout, and Emily, I'm putting you on the spot here, where Emily really was astute in saying, well, maybe it's the leader's fixed mindset, or maybe there's some fear that's getting in the way of taking a solution that would help to delegate and adopting it. So I'm just thinking ahead, like what kind of messaging could we use to help full teams see the value of taking leading edge together? And maybe those who are on the call too could think, oh, maybe you've talked about leading edge to the folks you work with, and maybe you could help us with messaging. So I'm just putting that kind of broad question out there to maybe provoke some conversation.
Yeah, it's a great point to be making, Kathy. What we really hope to have as a net result of this very important year is to start creating a ripple effect. And that's one way in which we can do so, is maybe some of those people that are tuning in and engaging in the program now are feeling so inspired. We need to think, Lincoln and the CVMA, how we can create an opportunity. Some sort of opportunity, at the very least, some information or something to support individuals engaging in the program in having a conversation with their leadership. Because I know of so many practices who sit down together. They sit down even with their practice manager and the nursing team and find that everybody gets such a benefit from so many of these concepts, even if they don't have any responsibility, say, in the consulting room, that they still find this incredibly beneficial.
Mm-hmm. So they all watch the modules together in some cases?
We do. We certainly do see that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's a good one for us to explore together.
Mm-hmm.
As time progresses, if there's an interest in, at the very least, sharing a brochure or something along those lines that helps you explain what you're doing a little bit better with your leadership, we'd be happy to. Maybe it's even taking it one step further and creating a webinar or something along those lines where we give them a little bit of a taste, give them an invitation. I'm really happy to get behind that and give up my time to help support all of you create a ripple effect in your own practices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks.
No worries at all.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other questions or comments? We still have a couple minutes.
That's great. Great
You
if there are
saved
none.
us 2 minutes, Michael.
What's that?
You
Yeah, well,
saved
I
us
was
two
thinking
minutes.
on that subject, we should buy ourselves back a critical little incremental
Oh, there
chunk of
is a
time.
question. There's a
Oh, here we
question
go.
in the chat.
Ah,
Yep.
there we go, just came in. It's from Zian. I am currently a fourth year vet student and I'm pretty overwhelmed trying to learn with my rotations. Any suggestions with starting to integrate more planning and automation when we switch to a different rotation and different systems every few weeks?
That's difficult. That's difficult, isn't it? When the goalposts are constantly moving. And one piece of great advice I've had in these sorts of situations when there are so many variables is at the very least focusing on the elements that you can control. And sometimes, what was the name of the person that provided that comment?
Zihan Lee.
Zihan. Sorry, Zihan, is sometimes all we can do is focus on those elements that are within our power to control, and whether that is creating some time of day. One of the things that one habit I've really gotten into, I plan every single day. And I just get up really early. And I don't want to offend you with that because I know you're working incredibly long hours. But the reason I do it is because I'm a parent as well as a business owner, and I've got so many responsibilities in the course of my day. I know that if I can get up super early, I can have that 45 minutes where I have my coffee, I have this little ritual, I'll do some learning, I might engage in a little bit of mindful practice, and then I will get out my scheduler and I'll look at what's coming up for me for that particular day. I'll go to my to-do list, I'll have a look through this as well. But I've really created a ritual around it so that nothing can impinge on that, because those things, in my view, are non-negotiable for me, bringing my best every single day. So I don't know, Zihan, if there's any opportunity there. If all these other factors are swirling and out of your control, maybe there is some way you can create some non-negotiable time as well that will always be your little time for that ritual of those incredibly important processes that often suffer, right? All of that blue zone often suffers when we feel like we're a little bit out of control. So finding some way to maintain some control, I think, is the key thrust of what I'm suggesting to you. Is that helpful? I hope so. Maybe Kathy's got something else to add.
I just put in the chat, maybe creating a checklist would help with the top priorities for the rotation. You might not know that till like the first day of the rotation.
Yeah, great idea.
But then I also look, and this is not like shaming and blaming at all, but I
No.
also look at the instructors and think, well, why don't they do this? Why don't they put a quick checklist together and they send it out to the incoming students on the Friday, the week just prior to the weekend of the next rotation starting, so that it's more collective, right? Because that's a whole ecosystem approach that I'd love to see vet med shift to, that we're all in this together. What can a leader do? What can an instructor do? What can we do individually? In this case, to better manage time.
Yeah, Kathy, what you're describing there is just a system. Creating a system that can help people manage their time better and plan their time better.
We have another comment from Claudia here. This is an important ADHD strategy to create a routine where you can and to plan your weekday. I do it every Sunday. I transfer my Google Calendar into a paper calendar, which helps me avoid unexpected things.
Such great advice. Yeah. I tell you, my daughter has ADHD, and this is critical this was a big step in us developing her strategies, for sure. For her was planning and just giving her back that sense of control. So I'm sure it would apply as equally applicable for people that aren't neurodivergent.
I listened to Dr. Christy Pickles from the UK, who she is neurodiverse, and she has now done a couple of studies in neurodiversity and veterinary medicine, and she teaches at one of the UK veterinary schools. And this is somewhat related to time management. she says what works really well for her, and typically folks who may have those neurodivine characteristics, is the Pomodoro technique, where if you tend to hyper-focus and have difficulty shifting from one activity to another, the Pomodoro technique, where you turn on a timer for 25 minutes, you start the task, and then when the timer goes off, you end that task. Even if you feel like you haven't completed it in full, which I think is really appropriate for many of us who have perfectionistic tendencies in vet med, just move on to the next task. And I know that can't always work in clinical settings, but maybe it's something one can do when it comes to record keeping, or something that can be a little bit more continuous, to do the Pomodoro technique. So the vet's name, I'll put it in, Alex, is Dr. Kirsty Pickles. She is incredible. She's got a really nice webinar on neurodiversity that Vet Life in the UK hosts.
I'd love a link to that as well, Kathy, if if you can steer us in that direction, that would be brilliant. Because I believe Kirsty's also doing some research into prevalence of neurodiversity in the veterinary profession, and I would suspect
she is.
It's a much greater proportion than anyone anticipates.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
Claudia had another comment. She says a great app for those who are neurodivergent, especially ADHD. FocusMate is a great one that is based on the Pomodoro technique and the buddy system.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
It's
There's
just a place where you meet up with another person to work together if you're having trouble focusing on something. It might not help with Xian if you're in rotations and stuff, but if you're like just set aside an hour at the end of the week and meet up with a person, and then you're like forced to work together, and you like, it's like an accountability buddy basically. It really helps for that. That's how I studied for my boards exam last year, and I don't think I would have ever made it without it. So I'll put the link in.
Great advice for all of us.
Thank you.
I see that there's another question.
Yes. Thanks, Kathy. So Megdi Aguilar is asking any advices regarding how to handle and work with techs who do not know their responsibilities and jobs, but try interfering with vet jobs.
So difficult, isn't it, Maddie? Because once again, this comes back to a question of leadership at the end of the day, and decision makers in your practice. One of the critical fundamental elements that we teach, and there's a leading edge module dedicated to this, is setting really, really clear expectations as a leader is crucial. And it sounds like expectations perhaps haven't been set with at least some of the vet techs in your practice. So I would strongly suggest, having a one-on-one with whoever your direct manager is and engaging in a conversation around this, because it's really their responsibility for setting those expectations in the first place. And that sounds a little dangerous. I should imagine that's not just annoying for you, it's worrying as well. If there aren't clear guidelines on who's supposed to be doing what, it sounds like this person perhaps hasn't been trained appropriately, or perhaps hasn't absorbed the information that's been provided to them. There's a gap somewhere that sounds like it needs to be filled, and that sounds like a leadership responsibility there. Would that be fair to say, Mehdi? Did not work. Gosh, that's so frustrating. There really is. Maybe one other opportunity is having a really courageous conversation with them. We've got to be leaders in our own right in many respects. And at the very least, going into that conversation with as much generosity and curiosity as you possibly can, to try to understand what the gap is between what you're expecting and what they feel they're responsible for, could be another step that you could take. It's disappointing for you that the leadership team haven't been successful at the very least. if I interpret did not work as in an intervention happened or they tried something on your behalf and it's not changing. But the only other thought I have for you is setting some expectations of your own very gently. And, this person's probably trying to do the very best job they can. They're probably incredibly proud of their capabilities, but maybe you need to create some gentle boundaries with them as well. That's my only other thought, Manny.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we finish for the evening? Medi added, the results have been preferring not work with me. Not
Yeah.
sure what you mean.
I think I'm inferring there that she's tried that conversation and it hasn't gone so well. It's difficult,
okay.
so difficult. And I would say typically for most people, that would be re-engaging with your manager, the leaders in the organization, and sharing the fact that you've tried to address this yourself and see whether or not they can step in again and try a different course of action. So frustrated for you.
Okay. Okay, yes, Cian. She's also wondering about where they can access the recording. Whenever the session is recorded, it does take a few days to edit it out. So I will probably have that up in the next week or two into the community space on the leading edge. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Any other questions before we finish off for the evening? Looks like we're good. Fantastic. Have a great evening,
Fantastic.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for giving up your time.
Take care of yourselves, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.